rather abrupt look at my face up close, but I hope everybody is doing well. First of all, can I be heard? That's the first important thing. Can I be heard, everybody? If somebody could just post that real quick. Great. Excellent. I do appreciate it. Welcome to the latest live stream on the Angry Astronaut. Have things from a little bit of a different perspective. Excuse me, so I can see you guys and see your. Thank you very much, those of you who are making kind comments right off the bat. That's very nice of you. But this is today kind of a 1-2 punch. I do this a lot on the weekends. I'll have a live stream and I follow up with a video very quickly. So that's what's going to be happening, and I'm very close to the camera so that I can see what you guys are talking about and hopefully notice a lot of your questions. In addition to that, my Discord supporters, Patreon supporters, they are on the live stream Q&A. Hello, Mad Lawyer. Hello, G. Pickin. And so we've got folks here who get to ask questions through a different source. Chris, thank you so much. Opening things up right away. It looks like somebody else made a donation too. Wow, thank you. This is actually part of what I'm working on today, is trying to raise a little bit of money to go back to Boca Chica for the third time to see SN15 when it launches, which is going to be a little while, but nevertheless, it's who knows. I mean, the way Elon moves his projects along, you can never tell. You can never tell. And hello, West Midlands, England. I have been there a number of times. As a lot of you know, I've been to England. I'm going to try to clear this up just a little bit to get it. Okay. I've been to England 8 times in my life. Thank you so much, Rispergu. So yeah, it's definitely a big part of my life. The United Kingdom always has been, and I have about 12% of my supporters, my subscribers are from the United Kingdom. And hello, Michigan. I've got connections there as well. So all over the place, really. I like to travel, and I've been a lot of places. But my traveling is all focused right now on what I do. Aside from the trips that I go on with my son, and even those I try to make associated with space. For example, I'm taking him skiing in Colorado. He has never been skiing in Colorado. As a matter of fact, he doesn't even remember being there. So hello, Russia. Здравствуйте, как поживаете? And Germany, Guten Morgen, or actually for you guys, Guten Nachmittag. So I know how to say a smattering of things in a variety of languages, but that's about it, just enough to get me in trouble. So folks from everywhere, Australia, thank you so much for joining me. I know that you folks are joining me, and the Philippines, wow, joining me from all kinds of crazy places where it's a crazy time of day and or night, or morning or whatever. So thank you very much. Hello to Israel. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I am going to be thank you. Another super chat just went by. Didn't even see it. So we're going to get right into, wow, people from all over. That's really what amazes me. Frederick, thank you so much. I appreciate the super chat. And like I say, all of this is going towards me getting to see SN15. It can be super chats. I also have my PayPal and Patreon linked in the description if you want to go that way. Either way is fine by me. It all helps. So thank you very much, everybody. We have nearly 300 people joined in already. Please like, please subscribe, and let's get going. So yeah, oh, hello, Steve from Crawley, UK. Very nice to talk to you. And New Hampshire, lovely up there in the Northeast. I really like that region of the country. And a lot of people may wonder how the hell I ended up down here as a result of, with all the other places that I like to go. Well, I'm not going to, talk down about the South. It's a beautiful place and also very, very hospitable people, really nice folks down here. But at the same time, it wouldn't have been my first choice. I actually got transferred as the result of a job, and then I got married and stayed down here for more than 2 decades as a result, raising a family. So had this been my first choice, I probably wouldn't have ended up here, even though my father is from Mississippi. Being in the South is not where I probably would have ended up in the long run, and I'm not going to end up here forever. I'm going to be going elsewhere eventually. But enough about me. Let's talk about the Raptors. Let's, because we've been having, with every launch of one of these serial number prototypes, we've been having issues with the Raptors. We've had to swap out a Raptor almost every time. And either we're having problems with pressure being generated by, fuel tanks, by the header tanks, or perhaps in this last situation, there's a lot of different information that's been circulating around about what went wrong with SN11, but it is unquestionably the worst disaster that we have faced, I like to say but nevertheless, it's, and it's supporters of SpaceX is how I like to look at it. And I count myself as one of those. So really, it does appear that this last disaster was caused by the Raptors. There was problems with engine 2 right from the beginning. And I do believe that there was some issues with the between the oxidizer and the methane being injected into the engine, that there was a fuel-rich mixture. And this has happened more than once. And you see that characteristic orange color coming out of the exhaust, which suggests fuel-rich. This is something that I got from Mr. Manley, who runs his Fly Safe. He's a very knowledgeable fellow. So I always try to research his stuff anytime you're talking about rocket engines. He is much more the rocket scientist than I, but nevertheless, I do tend to agree with him on this, that, fuel rich, it just seems like the balance that this particular type of engine requires has been very challenging to reach. And there's a very good reason for that. This is a highly sophisticated engine, very highly sophisticated, closed cycle, free flow. And that's, it's tough to put the terms of the description of these engines into layman's terms. It's really, really tough. It's actually very tough for somebody like me to understand how all of it works. The way that I like to think of how a free flow closed cycle engine works is it's recycling everything that gets put into it. The fuel, the oxidizer, all of it gets recycled, so none of it is wasted in the exhaust. And so you have gas going back into the pre-burner, both oxygen and the methane, which was in a liquid form to begin with, but is in a gaseous form by the time it hits the combustion chamber. And then it comes out with a tremendous amount of thrust for the amount of fuel that's being used. It's a highly efficient engine, but at the same time, nobody has sufficiently, or rather has successfully gotten one of these engines into space. Nobody. The Russians came the closest with the N1. They had closed cycle free flow engines for that particular rocket for the last 2 iterations of it. Not entirely the same, of course. No 2 two rocket engines are exactly the same, but still, that's pretty much how that went. And of course, the N1 never got to space at all. Does that mean that the design, the entire idea of a free flow closed cycle engine is, flawed? I don't. I think that we're equal to the task, that our engineers can do something about this, but still, it's a challenge beyond all belief. Full flow isn't too complex if you know how it works. I'm studying propulsion, and my current project revolves full flow. Yeah. Like I say, it can. I'm not saying it can't be done. What I'm saying is that you need, a lot of equipment in order to make it work. You need two turbines rather than one for the fuel, one for the oxidizer. As opposed to the BE4, which is just an oxidizer-rich closed cycle engine. It's different. And thank you, Foom. Wow. Okay, Foom dropped a 50 bomb. Unreal. Thank you so much, Foom. You are such a colossal help to this channel and to me personally. I am deeply moved. Thank you so much. And to everybody that's made donations already, you guys are awesome. This is what allows me to go where I go. And I have to admit, even though I got tons of support during this last trip that I took, and thank you so much, because I would be in deep trouble had it not been for all that support. It still ended up being a hell of a lot of money because I got stuck down in the Gulf Coast for 9 days while my car was in the shop. So I got a ton of help. Thank you very much for that. And right now I'm kind of trying to play some catch up, and you guys are making a huge difference. So thank you. Okay, enough of that. Are the Raptors pushing the envelope too far? Says Foom. Yes, perhaps they are. I think that that's one of the ideas that I wanted to. That's one of the ideas that I wanted to maybe put forward. Are we trying to take chemical engines just too far? To beyond what we're capable of doing, or beyond our technology? Are we trying to make chemical engines do what really they shouldn't be doing? And should we instead be looking towards a new type of propulsion? Should that be where our focus is going? And by the way, the video that I'm going to release today has to do with that, because news came out on April 1st, and it wasn't April Fool's, believe it or not, about NASA releasing more funds for nuclear thermal propulsion on top of everything else that they've done. So that's what this next episode is going to be about, and it's going to have a lot of new stuff about nuclear propulsion that I haven't put in my previous episodes. Ideas about how NASA might use it, and ideas also about how SpaceX might use it. Something with an ISP over 500 would be nice. Yeah, and that is, the whole problem. How many seconds can you keep your engine going? And that is, 450, 460, and really even the Raptor has less ISP than that. It's more in the high 300s. It has a lot of thrust, but not for a tremendous amount of time. And so if you have, that little ISP, that means you have, a smaller amount of efficiency, your engine is going for a shorter amount of time, and you burn your fuel faster. So instead, if you can have an ISP of 900 or 1,000, the way you can with nuclear thermal propulsion, then that changes everything. And it's really moving very positively in that direction, because there's a lot of incentives in order to go this direction, not just in terms of propulsion, but also in terms of miniaturized nuclear reactors. A lot of people are working on that. that. BWXT, who I'm going to be talking about in the episode, but also folks like Rolls-Royce, who are coming out with miniaturized nuclear reactors for small communities, to power small communities who are looking at banks of diesel generators to power their community instead. So yeah, there's another good point that's just been made here. Starship needs Raptors. Without Raptors, there is no Starship, and that could very well be. You need that much thrust in order to make it happen. However, another point that could be made is that the N1 was a monster as well. And it was not, at least at the beginning, it was not using these kinds of engines. But, are we going to switch away from the Raptor after so much time, money, and development? Probably not. However, is this what's causing a lot of our issues? And if so, it could take a long time for the Raptor to become a mature engine, just because there are so many things involved with it. There are so many moving parts in a Raptor. If any one of those go wrong, then you are out of trouble, right? If the Raptor doesn't work, then you need like 85 Merlins or something like that. Yeah, and the Merlin, by the way, is a totally different type of engine. It's not closed cycle. It's not full. It has none of the same characteristics. It's more of an old-fashioned engine. Is the flip maneuver just a bad idea? That could definitely be the case. Oh, Airborne Bob, thank you very much. Just noticed that. But getting back to that, maybe the flip maneuver is really what's causing a lot of these problems, because when you do the flip maneuver, you have problems with the fuel sloshing around in the header tanks and elsewhere. And so as a result, you may not be able to continue. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much. You may not be able to continue that ongoing flow of fuel that this particular type of engine absolutely requires that the fuel not only remain constant, but also remain completely balanced. You've got to have the exact right balance in order to make this work. And if you're sloshing around, that's not going to work. Now, somebody said, why not use BE4s? BE4s are very large engines. They take up a huge amount of space, and they aren't as efficient. So you're getting about 550,000 pounds worth of thrust, essentially, out of something that's physically way bigger than the Raptor. So you'd have to make a much bigger Super Heavy, in which case it weighs a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Elon, went for this option. Now, could we maybe make the Raptor into something a little less ambitious, perhaps an oxygen-rich closed cycle engine or something like that, something that isn't going to require as much sophistication? That's very hard to say. And that is a good point somebody just made. The BE4 is unproven in flight. Until we actually see the BE4 take off with the Vulcan Centaur, we don't know exactly how they're going to perform under pressure, so to speak. Although I feel pretty confident that they are going to work, given the results that we've seen so far. I do think that the Vulcan, especially since we're not talking about any flip turns or anything fancy going on right now, that means that you're going to, if it's just going straight up. And by the way, the Raptors have been pretty good at pushing the Starship straight up as well. I would say chances are the BE4 is going to perform as required, at least to get the Vulcan up to the proper altitude, and then the first stage to drop away. The smart reusability, that's going to be something different, but once again, it doesn't require that the BE4 do anything after that. The BE4 will have used all of its fuel at that stage, and then it will flip over with an inflatable heat shield, come back down, deploy a parafoil and get grabbed by a helicopter. So, at that stage, it won't be about the BE4. It will be about the smart recovery system and how well that works. And that's not going to really be tested until 2024, or rather used and no, the BE4 does not use hydrogen. I want to make something perfectly clear. It uses natural gas and it uses an oxidizer. The natural gas being comprised almost entirely of methane. The upper stage of the Vulcan Centaur uses hydrogen and oxygen. Those are Aerojet Rocketdyne engines, a totally different kind of engine for the second stage. And the reason that ULA went that route, having a first stage using methane and oxygen and the second stage using hydrogen and oxygen, is because they want a reusable second stage that can be used as a space tug that will use materials that we can get from the moon. And hydrogen and oxygen is very plentiful on the moon. And so that's the rationale behind that, is a second stage tug. So anyway, but that's why they have two different companies, two different kinds of engines in the same rocket. If it works, and by the way, I do intend to go see the first flight of the Vulcan Centaur, it will be pretty cool, but it might not work. It's hard to say. It's the maiden flight. You never can tell with a maiden flight. Okay, so let's see here. The goal remained the same even if no Raptor. That's true. New generation Raptors, says Ouija Lego, starting with SN15. Going back to Darth, SpaceX probably already has the test data to show that it's feasible and realistic performance goals. What we're watching them do is tune the configuration and mature the design. A degree of discovery and teething pains are to be expected. That's true, as they take design to the noisy world of materials and moving parts. There's care and feeding of them to work out as well. Very true. The big question is, the $1 million question is, how long is it going to take for them to get the Raptor to a level of maturity? That's a tough one. That's a very, very, tough one. Will it take months? Will it take years? There's a lot of improvements coming with the SN15. So that could mean improved performance, or that could mean hundreds of things that could go wrong. New things being introduced that haven't really been fully tested yet. So once again, we'll go back to the world of testing new things that may or may not work. Hopefully they will, but if they don't, then, once again, we're kind of going through a cycle of blow it up, blow it up, blow it up. And you're right. Somebody just made made the point, and I think it's a good point, that, take care of it for as long as it takes. And this is, probably the case, or probably realistic, because Elon has so damn much money, because he has so much in the way of funds to invest. Had the Soviets had the same level of commitment to the N1, they would have had an amazing rocket that would have had an incredible future for the Soviet space program. They just didn't have the commitment to keep spending the funds. But Elon Musk is not the Soviet government. So, we're going to have something entirely different. And it may indeed be years before it's finally taken care of. Why does SpaceX use the flip maneuver in the first place, says Mad Lawyer? Okay, the reason that's being used, and it's very interesting because, it doesn't have to be used on Earth. But what we have is, if the Starship is coming down like a skydiver, it reduces its speed because of the drag of the atmosphere. In other words, it reduces speed because of it coming down belly first as opposed to this way. If it comes down straight the way that the Falcon 9 does, then you have to be using fuel again and again to keep the descent under control. And you can use the atmosphere to accomplish the same thing. And so as a result, you use the atmosphere for as long as you possibly can, and then flip at the last second once that's taken care of and engage the engines. Now, I have, made the point a couple of times that maybe we should, maybe we should pull the flip turn earlier, use more fuel. I mean, you can afford to on Earth, I think, get away with flipping earlier. That will give you more time to light the engines, etc., and begin, and carry out the descent. The thing of it is that won't work on Mars. The flip turn is designed for Mars. The intention behind that is the atmosphere gets far more dense at the close to the nap of the Earth, or the nap of Mars, shall we say. And so you want to delay that flip turn as long as possible on Mars to get as much reduction in speed before you have to engage those engines. So it is, that's the reason for the flip turn. SpaceX is dealing with system test problem. As I said, the dynamics involved with the flip presents a very complicated problem with keeping propellants flowing. Very true. It would seem the only way to test this system is to build a Starship and light it up. Yeah. Tishman says, arguably, the orbital attempt will not be hindered by the failed landings of Starship first test, so they can try to go to orbit and in parallel try to nail the landings. Very true. This has been pointed out, actually, by my friend Mars Embassy. He has pointed out that getting to orbit will still allow SpaceX to get 100 tons to orbit. And yeah, if you lose the second stage Starship during the landing process, well, you still got 100 tons up into orbit for a price that's a lot lower than anybody else could charge. This is assuming that the Super Heavy can be retrieved. Now, this is something that will work in the short run, but if you want to go to Mars, it will not work in the long run, of course, because if you send up tankers, you're going to lose that tanker every time you send it up. So that's definitely something to take into mind. And yeah, the Raptor has not been tested to full power. That's another thing that Mars Embassy talks a lot about. What's going to happen when we do bring it to full power while it's in flight? Is it going to, really perform, or is something going to happen to it? It's a tough one to see what's going to happen in this regard, because right now the Raptors have not been tested to their full capability yet. Once they are they going to do better, or are we going to see more issues? Very hard to say because of the sophistication of what we're dealing with. Does SpaceX have an engineer of the caliber of Tom Mueller in charge of Raptor development? It's hard to say. I'm not privy to every engineer that they have, but nevertheless, they definitely have some extremely talented people. If they didn't, they couldn't do the sorts of things that we've seen them do with the Falcon Heavy. That is an amazing thing. If the flip is required on Mars, they may as well push through this. Yeah, I mean, it depends. The flip may not be required on Mars if you have more fuel available. And there's a lot of ways to accomplish that. And actually in my next video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. If you were to have a full tank of fuel, for example, before you attempted your descent onto the Martian surface, you could land without having to use the flip turn. So that all depends. By the way, we've got 666. Oh my God, the mark of the beast. We have 666. Oh, not anymore. A few people dropped off. There we go. It saved us all. People watching, thank you so much for supporting. I really do appreciate it. Please like, please subscribe. And also, as I said before, I am in the process of a fundraising effort to try to go see the SN15. I've been in this mode for a little while now. The Gulf trip that I just took gave me a pretty serious hit. But nevertheless, any support that I can get is very much appreciated. But if not, like I said, I've said this a million times, it is not your responsibility to pay my bills. So throw me a like, throw me a subscribe, and I'll be very, very happy. Okay, so what do we do about this situation? We just keep trying. How much do the Raptors cost? How much is investment is going into this? I've seen estimates on these prototypes, and the SN15 may even be more expensive, that are showing them going for a rate of over $200 million per prototype that's being invested every time we blow one of these things up. You can look that up. Once again, this is all estimates, of course, that have been made, but still made by some pretty good folks who have a lot of knowledge in the industry in terms of what it's costing to create them. And we are, how much are we losing as a result of every time we blow one of these things up? And once again, to reiterate, SpaceX fans and SpaceX, because I'll tell you, I'm going to be extremely bummed if SpaceX fails. I will be very bummed about that. It's one of the reasons why I started this channel in the first place, is because of SpaceX. The whole SpaceX Crew Dragon versus the Boeing Starliner, that was the very first episode that I did. How wasteful the Starliner is, how much money it costs, and then versus the Crew Dragon, which was much more innovative, far more affordable, costing NASA a lot less money per seat. So that was where I got started, with the whole we thing. We're kind of all in this together. It's granted the folks who work for SpaceX and Elon himself have the most to lose, but at the same time, anybody who's a fan of spaceflight does not want to see SpaceX lose. We don't want to see them fail. They have reignited human passion in spaceflight, and we absolutely, want them to succeed. And that's why I come up with every video that I come up with, whether it be critical or not, is because I want to see SpaceX succeed in what they're trying to do. I want to see Starship succeed and not fail. Okay, off topic. What velocity will be achieved by Starship on descent to Mars in such a thin atmosphere? That is a very good question. It could be as high as 800 kilometers per hour. And that would not be good at all if it's descending that fast. But the atmosphere is super thin on Mars, incredibly thin. So as a result, terminal velocity is extremely high. So in any event, that's something we definitely need to keep in mind is, let's with any kind of attempt to land on Mars, we absolutely need to remember just how thin the atmosphere is, and therefore how much of a difference it's going to be in terms of the rate of descent through the atmosphere. It's a tough one, definitely a tough one. One thing I can say though, in terms of the cost of these engines, is the size of the work crews and the size of the staff that I have been seeing so far. It is expensive, or not expensive, but it isn't cheap to keep all of these skilled welders, all of these skilled construction people, all of these engineers, all of these guys on payroll. It's not cheap to do this, guys, to run this kind of operation and to build things of this size, of this magnitude, and keep churning them out on top of the Raptors, on top of all of the heat tiles that we attach, painstakingly in different configurations on the ship, looking for different configurations that are going to work, and then ending up with, who knows what. So in any event, that's something that we definitely need to keep in mind. By the way, I don't know if any of my team is. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. To cut down on the amount of Raptors needed for launch and points of failure, why not use solid rocket boosters? That's a very interesting idea. Once again, it eliminates the solid rocket boosters. Of course, mean that it's not going to be a reusable vessel, depending on how heavy these solid rocket boosters are. If they aren't too big, then maybe they can descend via parachute and can be retrieved via helicopter, kind of the same way as smart recovery. Of course, those would have to be pretty small solid rocket boosters, but that could be a possible solution. Yeah, sure. I mean, they're doing it with the Vulcan, but at the same time, the Vulcan solid rocket boosters are not reusable. By the way, I was kind of bummed out. Going a little off topic, I was kind of bummed out to discover that the first launch, the maiden launch of the Vulcan, is only going to have two solid rocket boosters. Means it's going to be less noise. Oh, thank you. So scared. Boy, that was super nice of you. Do appreciate that. Thanks very much. And like I say, thanks everybody for your support. It's all going towards SN15. And dear God, I hope there's no fog for this one. I hope that they wait until there's no fog. I think there's lots of reasons why they should wait. But I think a lot of you have probably seen my episode about that. So we're not going to get attached to that. Yeah, let's get to 300 likes, guys. We got over 700 people watching. It'd be nice if we can get to 300 likes right now. But anyway, everybody sip coffee when AA drinks. Yeah, and keep it in coffee, by the way. It's early in the day, guys. Keep it in coffee if you can. All right. Back to Discord. I wonder if the Dragon capsule has been considered as a Starship payload to drop onto Mars with parachutes to begin with, and let Starship land unmanned but refuel. That's a very interesting idea, Phil. I mean, why not have a bunch of Dragon capsules? Thank you, Kim. Why not have a bunch of Dragon capsules on the Starship and use them as landing craft? That's a very interesting idea indeed. Maximus, thank you very much. So yeah, I like that. Or just, landing pods in general. Just get the Starship into orbit, which, by the way, it is not currently configured for that. 5 tanker refills will not allow the Starship to enter orbit. All it will allow it to do is to plunge headlong towards Mars, hit the atmosphere, and use the atmosphere to slow down as it makes its landing maneuver. Keep the Starship on Phobos, drop payloads and return. Anthony, I love that idea. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about that in my next episode. In my opinion, Phobos and Deimos could be the ultimate orbiting fuel depots. Natural fuel depots that are full of carbon, full of water ice, full of all kinds of things that we can use to manufacture oxidizer and manufacture methane. They would be perfect for that, and also perfect, by the way, for nuclear propulsion, because nuclear thermal uses hydrogen as a propellant. And if Phobos and Deimos have these materials, then of course it's going to be a huge benefit. So yeah. And you know something? All these decades, we've tried to explore Phobos once, I think, but we haven't put enough effort into exploring those moons, and so much benefit could be gained from it. Jughead, thank you very much. Why not strap Falcon 9s onto the Starship as boosters? That's an interesting idea. I never thought of that. I mean, the Falcon Heavy is nothing more than 3 Falcon 9s strapped together, isn't it? So why not put on Falcon 9 boosters, have them detach, and then land themselves? It adds a lot of complexity, of course, but maybe. Maybe. The Starship should, that's an interesting idea I'm looking at. They should have five smaller engines. Raptors are too powerful. They need smaller engines, better finite element analysis on the rocket. Raptors' acoustics shake the rocket to death. Maybe so. I mean, once again, we are pushing chemical rockets to their very limit with the Raptor. I mean, it is, we're using every bit of the fuel and the oxidizer and recycling it essentially, put it into its simplest terms in order to give it the maximum amount of thrust. So, if that's what we're doing, then, you can expect to have some problems. There are reasons why this hasn't been done in the past. The Russians have manufactured an oxidizer-rich closed system, but, they did a fuel-rich, I'm sorry, and the RS-25s are oxidizer-rich from the space shuttle. And by the way, have an extremely high ISP. That's one thing about the RS-25. Their ISP is actually substantially higher than the Raptor or just about anything else. But they are also colossal. They're huge engines, and they are also very expensive. It's 5 o'clock somewhere in Britain. Not quite 5 o'clock in Britain right now. Actually, it's more like 3 o'clock, I believe, or getting towards there. Okay, let's see here. Any comments on EM's commitment after his tweets regarding space-based Texas and donations to Brownsville schools and communities? Yeah, I think Elon wanted to kind of change the subject a little bit, change the topic. After SN11 went boom, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of, debris, granted lightweight debris, but debris floating down on South Padre Island, and that could have freaked people out. So then I think Elon wanted to change the topic away from Starship a little bit and say this is what the space base is going to be doing for the local community. And by the way, the area of Brownsville, Harlingen, etc., could really use that kind of support. They are not a wealthy community. They're an industrial community. They're not, a vacation town the way South Padre Island is. The area surrounding that is not that at all. And so they could definitely use Elon's help. So I think that was a good move on his part to kind of take the conversation, deflect the conversation away from SN11 and what had just happened. Good idea. Now, once again, does that mean he was bribing the local community? No, I think Elon probably always intended to do this. He just timed it, at this particular time in order to, move the conversation elsewhere. Maybe a parachute to stabilize the descent to allow a relight in time before landing. Parachutes, tartan, are, of course, a difficult thing with something this heavy. That is one thing about Starship. It's huge. It's extremely heavy. And so something that we need to take into account. Wow, we're over 400 likes now. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Don't think you need to explain yourself each time we use we, says Roger. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. A lot of folks do call me on that, though. So anyway. But yeah, I do find myself explaining that a lot. 4:30 in the Netherlands, says Tishman. By the way, love to go to Amsterdam someday and throughout the Netherlands. So much awesome history there. So I'd really love to go there. That would be fantastic. Raptor improvements for the SN15. What do I expect? Well, Tishman, what I'm hoping for Raptor improvements is that we're going to be seeing the vacuum Raptor. That's what I'm hoping for, is the vacuum Raptor, because these need to be tested too. They absolutely need to be tested, and there's going to be vacuum Raptors on the Super Heavy. So I'm kind of hoping that we take the Starship up to its full complement of 6 engines. Now, I've got some doubts about that. I think I'm probably wrong about that. But that's what I'd love to see. Modifications to the Raptor it doesn't seem to always result in positive results. I mean, a lot of changes were supposedly made to the Raptors for SN11, and look what happened. Probably the worst performance of the Raptors we've seen so far, not necessarily in terms of thrust, but just in terms of reliability. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, obviously things need to be done to the Raptor. There need to be modifications made. It absolutely has to happen. It's just a matter of what and when. If the FAA gets difficult about the proximity of Padre Island with the whole rocket loaded with hundreds of tons of fuel, thousands actually, can they physically take it out there to see? Yeah, Phobos, I've actually been an advocate of that for a while now. I'm kind of thinking that once we get to super heavy and actually full-fledged stacked launches, that we probably want to be doing that from the platforms, from the oil platforms, 30, 40, 50 kilometers offshore. If they can manage that, SpaceX can hammer that together, that would be a much safer thing. And it would still be super impressive, I think, to see super heavy and Starship launching, especially as like maybe 30 kilometers, that sort of thing. I still think it would create an amazing effect on the horizon. And plus, sound travels well over water, so I think it would be a pretty amazing thing regardless. Roger Freeman says Falcon rockets would add so much weight you may as well add fuel capacity and propulsively land on Mars. Yeah, and I remain kind of a fan of propulsively landing on Mars or finding a different way of landing on Mars. Maybe not land the whole Starship, but rather landing pods of some kind and keep the Starship in orbit. That's kind of how NASA has things planned right now. They want to have kind of, or at least one of their ideas, and I'm going to talk about this in the next video, of an orbiting base camp, kind of like a lunar gateway for Mars, and then have descent vehicles going up and down from the base camp, exploring different parts of Mars, and also exploring Phobos and Deimos. This, in my opinion, is a great idea. You can go to Mars for the long term, for a couple of years, and explore the whole thing as opposed to just a few locations or one or two locations, if you have an orbiting base camp to operate out of. It's a great idea. I don't like who's making it, though. Lockheed Martin is putting it together, which means it's going to be crazy expensive, and it may never happen. Okay, so let's get back to the chat here. The gateway idea was designed for Mars. Thank you, Jude. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, the base camp is, but yeah, the whole Mars base camp is very similar to the lunar gateway. Much bigger, bigger habitation areas, bigger laboratories, that sort of thing. But I'm not going to get too much into that because you're going to see that in the episode that's coming out really soon. 750 people watching. Thank you, guys. Please like, please subscribe. And if you're capable of supporting what I'm doing right now, please do support my travel to go see SN15 take off, because I would really love to do that. And these things can obviously involve money that you didn't expect, because they don't launch this day, they launch another day, or they take a weekend off, that sort of thing, in which case you have to stay down there until they eventually launch. And I intend to stay down there this time for as long as it takes before they launch. So obviously, raising the funds necessary for that is important, but at the same time, a like and a subscribe would be, valuable to me as well. It's not your responsibility to pay my bills. Say it over and over again because I believe it. Okay, the rocket, that's how I understand. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Twickers Bernie. Okay, we got some folks talking there. Let's have a look at the chat and see what else we have. Let's see if we can get to 500 likes. Lance, thank you so much for the £5. Really do appreciate the super chat. It's awesome that you guys are keeping this coming, because it's going to make a huge difference to me. Thank you so much. It's a good thing I didn't go with SN11. Yeah. And you know what? If I may rant for just a moment. Shane, £5 again. Thank you so much, guys. If I may rant for 1 second. regardless of whether launching the fog was a good idea from a testing perspective, it was a terrible idea for supporters of SpaceX. And that is something that should have been taken into account. Elon got impatient, and I think he got unacceptably patient. I love the guy. I think he's done some amazing things for the future of spaceflight. Not just that, for Tesla, for all kinds of awesome things that Elon has done. But I think he made a big mistake there in terms of his relationship with the people who support him, because there are people who spent a lot of money and a lot of time and reorganized their lives and their careers, etc., in order to go see SN11 take off. And instead, what they got to see was nothing. They didn't even see a glow in the fog. There was absolutely nothing. And then they got to hear a boom. And then if they were lucky, maybe they got some insulation falling from the sky. That's about all they got for all their time invested. And is it SpaceX's responsibility to accommodate these people? Well, not technically, but at the same time, I would like to think that SpaceX is different than Boeing, than Lockheed Martin, than all of these other people that don't care about the people that follow them, about the people who support them in the public. I would like to think that they're different than that. And this time they weren't, and they have been in the past, because they open up their rocket facility for everybody to look at. They allow people like me to live stream, right next to the launch pad. That indicates to me that they have a connection with their supporters. So what happened with the launch? I don't get it. But at the same time, I doubt we're ever going to get a solid answer on that. And it is too bad. It really does kind of bother me. Okay, rant concluded. We'll move on. Let's see here. Terraforming Mars. Okay. Yeah, I released a video about that a couple of months ago. A totally different topic as far as that's concerned, and a very long term topic. So I'm probably going to steer clear of that, Twicker. Sorry about that, but this is more about the Raptors. Are they, the biggest part of the problem? And if not, are they, is there something else that's causing the issue? Okay, so we'll keep this going here. The FAA has to be on site for the launch. Maybe the FAA did not have time to wait around. Yep, that could be. It could be the FAA's fault. But I'll tell you something. If it was, if it had just been me on site, I could have told the and I'm not a knowledgeable person at all, but if I had been a SpaceX representative, I would have said, hey, launching in the fog is going to deprive us of a lot of incredibly valuable visual information that we're going to need for this test. So I'll tell you what, I'll buy you dinner tonight, hang around, get us a bottle of wine, whatever, but please stay around until we can successfully carry out this test. If you force us to launch in the fog, you are going to deprive us of a lot of critical information. I think an FAA inspector would have listened to that. I certainly would hope so. Hope they would have done it. But at the same time, if the FAA was behind it, then yeah, sorry, Elon. And then I'll unleash the same wrath that I just did on the FAA. But like I say, I would think that the FAA, with their the caution that they exercise with anything happening in limited visibility, aircraft, whatever, that an FAA representative probably would have been concerned about, lack of visibility, rather than saying, take off because I've got an appointment, in Seattle today. But who knows? I mean, I wasn't there, so anything could have happened. It's hard to second guess these things. So yeah, the fuel supply. So is that it? Is it the complexity of the Raptors, or is it the fuel supply? Wow, a big super chat just came across. Whoever did that, Thank you so much. And I'm going to keep my conversation. Foom, dear Lord, Foom, you are appropriately named. You blow up this channel. Foom. Thank you so much. Okay, back to the question. So yeah, the fuel supplies, is that the main issue? It would seem so, apart from one very important factor, that we keep having to swap out these engines. We're always swapping them out. We have a static fire, swap out an engine. Static fire, swap out an engine. Every single serial number Starship up to this point, at least the ones that have flown, have all required at least one Raptor engine to be replaced before a flight. That is a source of concern for me. Now, is that happening because we don't have a flame trench? Because we don't have a lot of the things that a conventional launch site has? And so during static fires, you're pumping up all of this debris, pieces of concrete, etc., up into the engines, and it's just, damaging them? Is that what's going on? And if that's the case, why the hell don't we have a flame trench and a suppression system and everything else that a proper launch site should have? If those issues are causing problems, then that means that we have got to build that sort of thing. Now, an argument on the other side is, we're not going to have a flame trench on Mars. If we're coming back from Mars, it's going to be kicking up all kinds of debris. The Raptors will. We're not going to have a flame trench on the moon, for as another example. It's going to be kicking up all kinds of debris from there too. So we need to see how the Raptors perform under realistic conditions. Perhaps that's the argument. Hard to say. Hard to say. Okay, so once again, guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Andrew, thank you for the super chat. Phil, thank you for the super chat. Really do appreciate the tenor. Luca, thank you for the super chat. First Raptor flight was less than 2 years ago. Very true. It could take some more time for this to develop, for Raptor to become a mature engine. And if that is indeed the case, then we need to be realistic about the time frame that we're going to try to achieve orbit. If we're having these kinds of problems with 3 Raptors, can you imagine how much more of a problem we're going to have with 24 of them firing simultaneously? That represents a serious problem to me as well. Sailing, thank you so much for the super chat. So yeah, if this is an engine that's a long ways away from maturity, then trying to achieve orbit now or in a few months or even this year, I think is probably not only unrealistic, it's kind of dangerous. We got to see a little bit of that with the airburst of Starship. And by the way, my next episode, it's going to start out with a drive-through of Boca Chica. Mars Embassy was kind enough to go out to the launch site. SpaceX was not permitting people to stop on the highway, but you could drive through, and he got some really good footage of just how far all that debris went. And let me tell you, it went a long way. I'm talking more than a kilometer for very sizable pieces. And again, that was a result of the airburst effect. Okay, back to Discord. Tijman, I understand the sentiment about waiting for the fog to lift, but not having to take the public supporters into account with testing is probably one of the reasons why SpaceX will not go public anytime soon. Yeah, I kind of wonder whether or not SpaceX should really go public anyway. I like the idea that Elon has so much of his own personal effort and money and resources invested in SpaceX. I don't think that he wants to be answerable to anybody else, which he would be if they take it public. And so much that it kind of opens the company up to public scrutiny. And, theoretically, he could get removed from his position in the future if you do those sorts of things. If you have a board, so a powerful board more than just a rubber stamp board like he has right now. So I don't know. I'm not sure if SpaceX will ever go public. If the FAA left or was an obstacle without coordinating it with SpaceX, Elon would have tweeted, says Darth. Yes, and there's grounds for a grievance. I do agree with that. I think SN11 was more about SpaceX showing us, and more importantly themselves, that they can launch at a predetermined time rather than having us internet nerds watch live as they struggle through technical problems. Also not comfortable with the perception of go fever surrounding SN11. It's concerning. It is concerning to me too, Darth. You go when you're ready to go. You go when everything's prepared and you have all your ducks in a row, at least as best as you can. That's when you go. And if you go earlier than that at all costs, granted, yeah, okay, it blows up. What's the big deal? You just launch another one. But the problem is that SN11, we learned so little from that. And I think it was a substantial investment of money, time invested, etc., in that prototype that essentially went up in a blaze of glory. We got to see that Starship could take off in the fog. Okay, we got to see that. But that's a question to be answered, ways in the future. Can Starship take off on demand? Yeah, we need to know that. I'm not sure if we need to know that right now. I think we need to know whether or not Starship can land first before we determine its all-weather capabilities. That's just my opinion anyway. I'm not too sure about that. But not a lot else that could, allows us to take steps forward. As I said in my last video about it, my analysis, I really don't think we took a lot of steps in that regard. Mad Lawyer says, which is more cost efficient, perfecting the Raptor in the flip maneuver versus one or more fuel depots? I like fuel depots personally. I've always been a big fan of fuel depots, and ULA wants them too. And I said this on Twitter, and in a place where Elon could see it, but of course, why should he pay attention to me? But nevertheless, he did say, that fuel depots made sense, and I think that we should be pushing forward with those. Hello, Timothy. Good to see you. And by the way, please, if you can handle some moderation for me on the chats, I would appreciate it. Phobos Miner, how will they test BN2? Would it be alone, or will they put a Starship on top? I think they're going to test BN2 on its own with Raptors. I think that's going to be the case. Wow, an hour has gone by already. I'm going to be hanging out for a little bit longer, guys, just so you know. But I have made a commitment for the 1-2 punch to complete my episode today and release it. So to have a live stream and a recorded episode at the same time. So I need to get it done. I'm more than 20 minutes through, so it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy episode with a lot of content, but I need to make sure I get that done. Okay, but I'm still going to stay on for a little bit longer. Correct about not going public, says Mad Lawyer. SEC involvement will hinder, not help. Corporate governance becomes burdensome. Yes, I agree. Institutional investors will require a return on their investment every quarter. Very bad idea. Yeah. I agree with all of that, Mad Lawyer. Definitely agree. Thank you, Timothy, for taking on moderator. Do really appreciate it. Okay, back to the chats. And sorry, guys, I know I'm bouncing around a lot. Use Starship to get heavy loads into orbit, get a fleet in orbit, and use a Dragon version. Yeah, using Starship just to get large amounts of cargo into orbit to assemble interplanetary ships, nuclear thermal ships, that sort of thing. All of that is very, very exciting, definitely. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Super Dracos to clear or approach the ground. Maybe so. Once again, I don't know if Super Dracos can do the job on Earth. However, they might be able to do the job on Mars with 1/3 of the gravity. It would certainly help to have a little bit more thrust, a little bit bit more propulsion. And that's another thing, if you're using engines as big as the Raptors to slow yourself down that close to the surface of Mars, it's going to create a huge debris plume, a massive debris plume. And that's definitely something that we have to keep in mind. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Dream Chaser scaled up. That's an interesting idea as well with reusable boosters. I like that a lot. Okay, let's see here. Boosters sent to Mars in advance. That's a good idea too. Like I say, this is one of the reasons why I like having these conversations. We come up with a lot of innovative ideas. Is anybody going to pay attention to them? Well, it's hard to say, but I have learned that there are people with power in the space community that watch this stuff. Axiom Space, as all of you know, or a lot of you know, Axiom Space, they are fans of the channel. I never knew that. I dropped by their headquarters when I was in Houston. They gave me some stuff, and they're moving to a new headquarters and offered to show me around. So I'm pretty excited about that. So who knows who watches this channel? I like to think other folks do, and also the folks from the Voyager station, the Gateway Foundation. They watched it apparently as well, and even came out with a reaction video. So I guess people watch my stuff. I'm honored. I must say I am honored, even if their reaction videos are not necessarily complimentary of my channel. I'm still honored that they watch it. That's a pretty awesome thing. How do we know they didn't learn anything from SN11? Good point, Tishman. We really don't know. All I'm saying is that there's a lot of stuff that, they learn stuff from the telemetry. There's probably no question about that. But compared to the other launches of the serial number Starships, SN11 was a disappointment. We really lost. It just wasn't a whole lot gained from it in comparison to other ones. By the way, a lot of folks making positive comments. Thank you so much, everybody. Really do appreciate you folks tuning in. Still over 700 people watching, almost 550 likes. Wow, neat stuff. Definitely neat stuff. Foom, my lord, Foom, thank you so much. Foom is blowing up this channel. I don't know what to say, man. Thank you so much for what you do. You are helping prop up this channel and to help me to advance and do bigger and better things. And I am so excited about all of this. That's why rocket scientists make big bucks. It's true. And that's another reason why I think that the Starship program, and each individual's prototype is not cheap. It's just not cheap. These people cost money, and it's not just the rocket scientist. A good welder costs a hell of a lot of money an hour. And they have a lot of good welders on this project, because when they didn't have good welders in the past, look what happened to those things. They were terribly cobbled together, the earlier iterations of Starship that blew apart under fuel pressure. That's why we had to get better welders on the job. They cost money, big money. Skilled people who work in this field, they cost money. So as a result, every one of these things, I don't think, it should be underestimated how much this costs to blow up one of these things. A good point was made that they have AI robot welders. That's true, but I haven't seen any of them working at the SpaceX facilities in Boca Chica. I think you need a much more controlled factory environment for these things to work. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go for about another 10 minutes or so. There's a comparison. This was just posted in Discord of the RS-25 versus the Raptor. The RS-25s use low-pressure boost pumps ahead of the main pumps to eliminate surging. Interesting. Raptor does not use boost pumps. Should that be added? Curious. I'm very curious about that. Interesting idea. I like it. We happy if you are getting trolled by the Gateway Foundation. I'll drink to that. Yeah. Once again, not to say Gateway, there's anything wrong with them. I think that they have a beautiful idea. I just don't think it's a realistic idea yet. I think that I think what Axiom, and not just Axiom, other people have in mind for space stations, Sierra Nevada, for example, they have some ideas for inflatable space stations. I think they're very good ideas. All of these things can be deployed with rockets that we have now rather than the Starship, whereas the Voyager is definitely going to need the Starship to be fully functional in order to transport, the components for the station. Whereas, like I say, the other ideas can be deployed by Falcon Heavy and by Vulcan. So now Vulcan, of course, hasn't flown yet, but it's going to fly in a few months, hopefully, and we'll see how things go. Once again, this doesn't mean that I like ULA better than SpaceX or anything like that. I just think that Vulcan is a good design, and I hope that it succeeds. I think it's a good rocket, and a good rocket, no matter who makes it, is a good rocket. And so that's why I tend to be a Vulcan fan. If SN11 discovers an unexpected reason for RUDS, then they achieved a lot. That's true. If there was something that popped up. Kim, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate you. Timothy transferring these. Pre-launch a halo assemble of Super Dracos, put it on the nose of Starship while in orbit, and then transfer to Mars. At Mars, do a sky hook. Yes, I love sky hooks. Sky hooks, for those of you not as familiar with it, a sort of platform that you have hanging. The best one, I think, would be hanging from Phobos down into the Martian atmosphere as it orbits, and then you either drop your landing craft from there, you ascend to that point and dock with the sky hook that's traveling through the atmosphere via Phobos, that sort of thing. But a sky hook from Phobos is one interesting idea that's been talked about to land on Mars a lot easier. I did do a poll on SN11 actually. Let's see here. We still have a few minutes, 7 minutes or so that I'm going to keep going. If for anybody who has additional comments, questions that you want to make, I know I've missed things in the chat. I do apologize for that. It tends to burn past, especially when we have over 700 people watching. Thanks for all the likes. I really do appreciate all of that. So, we've had a lot of, I think that there's a general consensus that even though the Raptors may not be a problem in themselves, the way that they're being used, especially the flip turn, and given that you need such a precise balance of oxidant and fuel, of liquid oxygen and methane in the whole, system to make it work properly. And, with a flip turn, that is damn hard to do. That could be creating some of our issues. Now, we've been having issues with Raptors even during static fires, having to swap them out. Maybe that's a problem with the Raptor, or maybe that's just a problem with debris being kicked up into the Raptor because you don't have a flame trench and there isn't enough distance between the bottom of Starship and the ground. And as I've seen these pads in person, and they look unlike any other launch pad I have ever seen. They are very close to the ground, and I can see why there would be a lot of debris getting kicked up. But once again, if you want to test something that's going to function on Mars or the moon without a landing pad, then you have to deal with that sort of thing. Oh, almost to 600 likes. Let's keep it going, guys. 600 likes. BN3 plus SN20 to orbit, says Tishman. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to have Super Heavy to an orbital status as early as BN3. I really doubt it. I think we're probably going to lose a few more Super Heavies than that during the testing process before we finally, because Super Heavy is gigantic, and we're going to be trying to land something that heavy. And by the way, it's going to be way heavier than Starship, even deprived of its fuel, because we're talking about something that needs to support not only all of Starship and its cargo, but all of the fuel of Starship, because Starship does not fire its engines until it achieves a very high altitude. So that means it's going to have to be put together and made out of out of pretty thick stainless steel compared to what we've had in the past. So I really don't think we're going to have BN3 to orbit. Maybe SN20, maybe that, but not BN3. I think we'll have something. Chris says, thanks for your thoughts. Not convinced about Raptors being the issue yet. Yep, we don't know. SpaceX knows a lot more than I do. Whoa, blew way past 600 likes. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Still over 600 people watching. I've got about 4 more minutes before I'm going to be jumping on and getting back on my work. Anybody watching the recorded version, once again, I've got to apologize. I'll be putting ads in. And the reason I do that, of course, is because I'm just trying to raise as much money as I can right now. Once I go see SN15 and know that I can, handle the expense of that, I'll be going back to my old practice of leaving ads off of the live streams, of the recorded live streams. Obviously, there's no ads on the live streams themselves. Instead of having a heat shield like Falcon 9s have, debris blowback shield. Interesting idea, Jerry. I like that. That's a very interesting idea. Join forces, space technology with Elon Musk and Bezos. Yeah, they're never going to join forces. Jeff and Elon, we're talking 2 mega egos that are never ever going to collaborate. I thoroughly believe that. Honestly, I think what's more likely is that ULA is going to gobble up Blue Origin. I think that the Vulcan and its very large fairing is going to gobble up all of the customers that New Glenn might have had, because Vulcan will have been in service for more than a year by the time New Glenn gets going. And so as a result, the only use that Blue Origin is going to have are those engines. And I think that ULA will make a move, maybe a hostile takeover, to be honest. But I think that there's going to be a takeover. You're right. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates did join forces. However, that was not a friendly collaboration. Bill Gates gave Jobs some money with the idea of having controlling interest in Apple. However, Steve Jobs took that money and ran with it, I think, in ways that Bill Gates had no idea that he was going to be running with that money and going towards the iPhone. Honestly, I think Steve Jobs played Bill Gates in that particular collaboration. So we'll see how that goes. All right. I don't think it's an accident that VC5 and VC6 Heavy with Smart are a good complement to New Glenn. Interesting. Yeah. Once again, I think Smart Recovery, once it gets going, is definitely going to put New Glenn out of business. One thing else that is not commonly known is during the military bid, and the reason that ULA got that 60% share is because the Vulcan was regarded by the U.S. military as the most promising rocket that any of the bidders had out there. And that was against things like the Falcon Heavy and the Falcon 9. The U.S. military regarded, and Space Force regarded the Vulcan as being the most promising rocket. Now, of course, Starship wasn't in that mix, but Starship is not as far along in development. And so, that's what happened in that regard. And one of the big reasons why ULA got that 60% share. Was it fair? It's hard to say. By the way, I want to be a fan of For All Mankind. I just haven't spent the money to pick up Apple TV, so I'll do that at some point, definitely. We're just about at the end of it. I'm going to take a quick glance at these last comments in Discord. Jeff Bezos will be the richest man in the cemetery. I don't see him expending a fortune on BO. Yeah, Phobos, Jeff does seem to have the whole idea that he who dies with the most toys wins, or rather, he who dies with the most money wins. That seems to be his philosophy, whereas Elon says whoever dies with the biggest legacy wins. I really think that that's what that's about. They both have the same size of egos, but their objective is different. Elon wants to be remembered for doing something amazing, and I think that he will be remembered for that. Doesn't mean that he doesn't make mistakes, doesn't mean that I'm not going to criticize him, but I do think that that's one thing that distinguishes him. Roger Freeman with the last comment. I've spent a lot of time on the haul to Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. Really, even trucking companies that are in fierce competition help each other out there. Yep, it could happen maybe with Jeff. I think it's more likely to happen with ULA and SpaceX than it is with Blue Origin and SpaceX, mostly because ULA has more to offer SpaceX than BO does. And that is with Roger. That's going to be our last comment. I appreciate everybody, 758 tuning in at the end. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you so much for all the support that everybody has given me today. It will be used for me to go see SN15. So until we find out exactly the source, what really is the Achilles heel of the Starship? Is it the Raptor? Is it something else? Is it a combination of all these factors? The fact that it's just this bleeding edge technology trying to accomplish something that's never been done before. And so the whole thing has to be an Achilles heel as a result, and we just have to be patient. Everybody, including Elon, has to be patient if it's going to be successful. Until all of these things come to pass, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.